Do you want to turn $10,000 into over $1 million? And would you like to do it in a short amount of time? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you my top 3 lessons that I learned that allowed me to do exactly that. Now, if you know my story, I was able to turn $10,000 into over $1 million in just 3 years. And all of this happened before I turned 30 years old. Now, it didn't just happen by pure luck. I know there's a lot of people who watch YouTube and TikTok and all these things now who think that, yeah, if I just have $10,000 and I invest in the right cryptocurrency, I'm gonna be a millionaire. This is not that video. I'm actually gonna tell you the 3 biggest lessons that I learned along the way. And the cool thing is, each one of those lessons happened at a different part of my 20s. The first was in my early 20s, the second was in my mid 20s, and I didn't learn the final lesson until my late 20s, which was actually the most important. But before I get into those lessons, let me just tell you a brief story about what my 20s look like. So to start my 20s, I got drafted by the Oakland A's as a 21-year-old. And to me, this was all going according to plan because ever since I was a little kid, all I ever wanted to do was play baseball. And I knew that eventually I'd have to go through the minor leagues in order to get there. Well, fast forward just 3 years later, at the age of 24, I was released by the Oakland A's, and essentially, my dream was over. My entire life, I did not have a backup plan. I was just banking on being a professional baseball player, and that was gonna be my career. That was how I was gonna make my money. I was gonna have all the fame and riches. But at 24, for the very first time in my life, I had to start thinking about what's next. Well, thankfully, during that time, I was starting my journey as an entrepreneur. I got my real estate license, and I sold a few homes. When that failed, I ended up getting into couch flipping by accident. And it's really cool to see that couch flipping is now a really big deal on YouTube and all of social media because it's an easy side hustle to make money on. But even after doing that, I realized it wasn't fulfilling and that I wasn't gonna make as much money as I wanted to. And so it wasn't until my mid-20s when I finally found real estate investing, house flipping in particular, and I was able to start making some serious money. Many people don't know this, but I actually didn't make 6 figures in a year until I was 27 years old. That was my 2nd year of flipping houses. And I see so many young kids who are just getting out of college and they're talking about how they're making 6 figures already, and yet they feel behind. I was super grateful that at 27, I finally broke 6 figures. It was a huge accomplishment for me. And as I had more success house flipping, I was able to grow it from a hustle to a company, and it was a great thing. I spent my late 20s trying to figure out how to lead a company, how to hire employees, and how to actually be a good boss. So I feel like I lived a lot of different lives during my 20s, but during all those different experiences, it taught me 3 key lessons that I want to share with you. And I learned these 3 lessons at the different stages of my 20s. Lesson 1 was in the beginning, in my early 20s. Lesson 2 was in my mid-20s. And lesson 3 was in my late 20s. And I promise, if you can master all 3 of these things, you will have success and eventually become a millionaire. So let's jump into lesson 1. As I said, I learned this early on in my 20s when I was actually playing baseball. And lesson 1 is this: you must master discipline. I learned this in my early 20s during my baseball career. I had to make sure that I was doing all of my weight training, both in season and off season. I had to make sure that I was eating right and getting proper nutrition for my body so that I could always perform at the highest level. I had to learn to take sleep really seriously. I could feel the difference from when I slept bad to when I slept good, and how much it impacted my performance that day during the game. Most people in business don't value sleep at all. In fact, they celebrate it when you don't sleep a lot. They wear it as a badge of honor that they continue to just work and that they can get so much done on no sleep. Well, I can tell you physically, I just wasn't as good when I got no sleep. And also mentally, I was not as focused when I was groggy and tired. You realize that you have to figure out how to get as best a sleep as possible in the worst of circumstances. And so I had to become disciplined with my sleep. I had to train myself to fall asleep in any situation. I had to train myself to get naps when I could, and I had to train myself to have a good night's rest no matter how many hours I was getting. Mentally, you have to have even more discipline. It's funny because baseball plays more games than any other sport. And during the season, you only get about 2 days off a month. And so there's a huge mental grind with playing baseball every single day with no breaks. But here's the secret to that. The very best baseball players are able to do the same things every single day and not get worn out by it. In other industries, when most people get bored of doing the same thing over and over again, they start slacking, they don't produce as well, they get bored, their mind wanders, You can't do that in baseball. If you don't perform at your job, you're getting cut and you're out of the game. But what I've learned as I've gotten into business is it's very similar if you're able to get over that. I had somebody mention to me a quote before that essentially said, if your business starts to get really boring and you're making a lot of money, then you're doing the right things. One of the biggest ways that I've learned to develop discipline is by having a routine. If you can figure out how to execute a consistent routine day in and day out, you are going to see results over time. There's a great book I recommend called Atomic Habits, which I really love. It talks about how doing the little things day in and day out create the biggest impact in the long run. And before I forget, the last piece of discipline that I'll add is you've gotta have it when it comes to money. In baseball, we weren't making any money. I was making $1,200 a month, and I had to learn to be frugal with every single dollar. I just could not afford to have any type of waste in my life or I was gonna starve. And so if you can learn to be financially disciplined with a little bit of money, it's gonna help you go a long ways when you start making a lot of money. And this actually leads me into lesson 2, which is to find a major money-making skill. Now, I've talked about this concept before, but here's the truth. You can get rich slow with a normal job. If you don't believe me, read The Millionaire Next Door. It's an awesome book that talks about how normal people who are making 50, 60 grand a year are able to become millionaires over time by having good spending habits and investing wisely. But you're definitely not gonna turn $10,000 into $1 million anytime soon by working a normal job. You're gonna have to figure out a skill that makes you a lot of money year in and year out. For me, that was house flipping and wholesaling. I realized that I could go flip a house and make $20,000, $30,000. And if I could just do that a bunch of times every single year, I was gonna be making some serious money soon. So don't think about the passive income right away, think about what can you do to create more active income today. And even though I'm a big advocate of house flipping and wholesaling, you may not end up wanting to go that route. And the beauty is, in today's world, there are so many other routes that can make you a lot of money as well. Maybe you wanna be a realtor or a loan officer. I've done videos on how much those guys can make. Or perhaps you wanna get into e-commerce. After starting my company, Lunar Ecom, I've realized how much money is in that industry for everyone. There are so many different ways to make a lot of money in e-commerce. But maybe you just want to be an influencer or a YouTuber. I've seen people who've only been doing YouTube or TikTok for a year and who are making tens of thousands of dollars every single month. And the beauty is, many of them don't require you to quit your day job today. You could start any of the things I mentioned right now as a side hustle. And as you get better at it, it can make you more money than your current job and allow you to quit and focus on this side hustle full time. So find out a career that's gonna make you a lot of money. And a quick plug, if you wanna get into house flipping or wholesaling as your major money-making skill, I'm actually having a 3-day event here in Las Vegas on September 30th through October 2nd. There's gonna be some awesome networking. I'm gonna be giving you the blueprint of how I run my company, and you're gonna get to mastermind with some of my top students who are doing over 7 figures a year. So I'll link to that event down below. But once you're able to figure out whatever that skill is for you, you're able to jump into lesson number 3, which is to turn that skill into a legit business. When you think about all the great companies across the world, none of them are one-man shows. They all have an organization, they all have a team of employees, they all have a brand. They're legit businesses. So you're gonna have to learn to transition from hustler who's making a lot of money into business owner who's managing people and making even more money. And look, this isn't something that happens overnight. I learned how to flip houses and I did it solo throughout my mid-20s. But in my late 20s, I got an office space, I started hiring people, we got a domain name, we made it legit. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was figuring it out along the way. I had never worked a true job where there was corporate structure. And so we made a ton of mistakes trying to figure things out, but eventually we did. But it took time. Even as I built out the business, I was still heavily involved. I had delegated some pieces off, like project management or transaction coordination, or even selling it as a realtor. I realized those weren't the best uses of my time, and I had other great people who could handle it. But I was still in charge of acquisitions. I was still going on seller appointments. I was still getting deals off the MLS. I was still getting them from wholesalers. I was the guy by pretty much getting all of the deals. And we made a lot of money doing that as a company, but it was still reliant on me. And here's the thing, the sign of a true business is one that can function without you. And thankfully, I feel like my house flipping business is at that point now. But I'm also into my 7th year of doing it, so it does take time. And this is the same way that I treat all of my businesses now. I think about how can I make sure that I'm not a bottleneck and that they're not relying on me for anything. If they are, then it is what it is. I just need to figure out what's the plan so that it's not that way. No one said building a business is easy, but I can tell you as somebody who owns multiple businesses now, it's well worth it, both time-wise and financially. If you can do it the right way, you're gonna see how fast your money multiplies. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a big favor and hit the subscribe button so that you can see other videos just like this one. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.